Having spent the better part of the last 10 years covering the restaurant industry, I've been fortunate enough to cross paths with the country's top chefs. What I've always enjoyed most about these culinary encounters aren't necessarily the meals or the dishes themselves, though they certainly are memorable, but rather the conversations and discussions which we've had once service has come to a close. Now I'm sharing these conversations with you. Join me around the table. This is After Service with Steve. Situated within Maker's Landing, a foodie hub at V&A Waterfront Cruise Terminal, is Mmabatho, a modern Zulu-inspired restaurant which seeks to celebrate Nguni cuisine and South African ingredients. Chef Mmabatho Molefe has become a trailblazing young chef, championing her heritage, culture, and the cuisine she grew up eating. Chef Mmabatho, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, no, always good to be here. And it's the first time I'm at Mmabatho since the move and / renovation.
Yeah, Mmabatho 2.0.
Yeah, it's looking absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
When did the renovations come to?
So we closed for almost a quarter of a year, mainly for winter and also preparing to move to the space. And luckily we opened just before season started, so in the middle of November.
Okay.
That's when we opened in this space, yeah.
Fantastic. And you had a good season?
So.
Okay. Well, hopefully we're getting there. I think there's so much activity happening in the harbour that hopefully we'll see some tourists coming through.
I hope so as well, I do.
And it's, it's an amazing journey you've been through to get here. Just tell us a bit about that. I know it starts with entering a cooking competition for a scholarship, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And now the end result is your own restaurant.
Turned into millions in dents. So I've always enjoyed cooking. It's always been a passion of mine. And I think doing a degree that was hard for me to finish sort of made me realize that, okay, you're not putting as much effort as you should. So I entered a cooking competition through Sense of Taste.
Yeah.
And didn't win, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
But I met my mentor there and I started working in his kitchen.
Okay.
And that really convinced me to enlist for culinary school and register to culinary school. And from then I've just been working as a chef.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, knowing a bit about your background, you've worked in some really cool restaurants around the country, and then was COVID happened, and it's I think no one wants to talk about it, but thankfully it's in the past now. But what I really love is you then decided to go home and to keep on cooking. You started doing your long tables with friends.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about those. How did that come about? What was the inspiration there?
So the long table with friends actually happened before COVID.
Okay.
And I started them because I had applied to top 10 restaurants in the country. I think I applied to La Colombe, I did Chef's Warehouse, and I didn't get any replies. So I was like, okay, let me just go home and sort of regroup.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be
being Durban, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be a short holiday, but it ended up longer. So I decided to start the long table with friends, mainly because I wanted my friends to pay for their dinner
instead of coming for freebies.
And that's how it started. And luckily, my friends were interested enough to come to two more dinners.
Okay.
And then after that, I moved to Cape Town and sort of continued doing them here.
Fantastic. I mean, you picked up a following amazingly quickly, I think, which has been really cool to watch. And I think it speaks to that idea of, especially with your long table dinners, of people just gathering around food. I think it's something that it's the great common denominator that we have as humans.
Yes, I think so too. It's one of the things that have made me struggle with table for one.
Yeah.
But being off on a Monday and people working on a Monday has made me reappreciate what a table for one is.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, but I sometimes love having a meal by myself. I think there's something to it, but I think nothing does beat a
like great company.
Yeah, a meal around a table, and I think so, it can add so much to an experience. So then, long table, landed up you went to work at Salsify after that, if I'm not mistaken.
So 2019, around April, I think, I started working at Salsify.
Okay.
Fortunately, chef would still allow me to have an off day and do a long table during my off day.
Yeah.
So I continued doing both at that time. I'm working and doing some pop-up dinners while I was off. Yeah.
Okay. And then Emazulwini, how did this come to be?
Emazulwini started because we sort of went on a break because everyone thought COVID was going to be
2 weeks. 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
And then while we were flattening the curve, I got locked down in Joburg with my mom.
Okay.
So I spent about 6 months just being at home, cooking home food, enjoying her cooking, and I realized that that's something that I actually want to pursue, and that's something that I want to see within the restaurant industry. So when I came up with Emazulwini, it was sort of supposed to be like a 5-year goal.
Okay.
But the industry wasn't hiring, and we got the opportunity to open here at Maker's Landing, and met a funder who was like, okay, I think you should do it.
This is a cool idea.
Yes, and we did, and we opened, and fortunately, we've been able to survive long enough to be here.
Fantastic. I mean, it really is amazing what you're doing. I think, obviously, you're doing a modern take on, your family food, what you ate growing up, and the food that is, it's heritage food, it's cultural. Yeah. Why did that become the angle you went for?
I think it was sort of mainly just owning my insecurities as well. I really love traditional food, and I think it's the food that I can represent the best.
Okay.
But also, like, if you're working at a high-end restaurant and you haven't traveled, sort of the reference point, you don't have a reference point in terms of like the food they're speaking about, unless it's through like TV or some sort of research.
Instagram or
So I really wanted to cook something that I knew what it was about, and I didn't have any doubts in terms of like how it was meant to come out. So it was very important for me to cook food that I know.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's so long overdue that, our local South African food gets, its space at the table.
Yes,
100%.
I think so.
And I think you've done a remarkable job with that, just seeing how, you have become, in many ways, a trailblazer for young black chefs. And I can say it.
I did it.
You can say it too as well.
No.
But no, I think it's absolutely incredible what you've done. Firstly, as just a chef of your age in general, but then also just considering the barriers to entry, I guess, that young black chefs face in the industry, and I mean you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible what you've achieved. Was that something you set out to do?
I always try and remind myself of my privilege in terms of being able to access spaces that other black people aren't necessarily able to access. But I think having a space like Maker's Landing made it easier for Emazulwini to be where it is at the moment, and for us to sort of transition to Emazulwini 2.0. Every time I think of like moving to a different space, I just think, okay, now I need to know an electrician. Now I need to know a plumber. And whereas when you're moving in a space with so much support, it makes the work easier, and it lessens sort of the load of running your own space. And I think if the more black chefs have access to spaces either like this, or enough support through mentorship or anything that says, okay, this is how you handle an extraction when it's not working. I think it would be a lot more easier than it is at the moment. But it's definitely something that you genuinely need to have support on, or
because it's getting started up. I think
like starting up is really hard. But fortunately, as a business, we're able to start up in a better spot than
Fantastic. With a bit of support.
Yeah.
And I think that really is a fantastic point, is that we've seen the prominence of a lot of incredible black celebrity chefs, but we are yet to see that same rise in top chefs in kitchens.
Yes.
Do you think that is because of this barrier to entry? And
I think so. I think it's just it's general support, mostly through capital, and secondly through just like operations or stuff that sometimes I also feel like it's too difficult for me to deal with. But I think you sometimes it's just easier to take a job that's going to say I'm going to pay you this amount for this one thing than continuously feeding into a restaurant per se.
And I
on
guess
a day-to-day,
capital that is required, is a lot less. You don't need to have a venue, you don't need to have a space. And I mean, I'm sure you are often approached to do the celebrity gig.
I don't think I have the personality.
No, man. But what is it that you love about the kitchen?
What is it that I
like? What is keeping you in the kitchen?
I love what I like about the kitchen. I love how once you've figured your way of working in the kitchen, it sort of grounds you.
Okay.
You sort of if you know your prep list and you know from start to finish, this is how I'm going to tackle this and this is how I'm going to do it. Like the process of actually watching everything, sort of like scratching everything on your list, taking everything that you've done. That's what I enjoy. And I was actually talking about that with one of my team members. I was like, I don't think I can be the chef that sort of like stands in the pot and calls for dishes. I want to be
involved.
I want to be part of what everyone is doing. And I think that not only shows the fact that I'm still young in the kitchen sense and I'm still enjoying the work of it. And hopefully I get to do less. But for now, it's what I enjoy.
It's all hands on. And I think what is incredible as well is, you've become such an inspiration for so many people, but it's also something you've implemented in your own kitchen in that you do, for the most part, employ black women. And it is such an underrepresented aspect of our industry.
I think the initial reason why I wanted to work with female chefs was because I thought it would just be us girls.
Okay.
Chatting would be easier. And I was wrong. It's a lot more difficult, but I think it's worth it. It's like you're watching us sort of do something that's generally not dominated by us and sort of work things out and produce food that's good. And that we're happy about is inspiring for me, and it's quite nice to see. But I think like every single thing has its own challenges, and like with having a female chef, you have to remember the fact that you're either hiring mothers or people who want to be mothers. So that's always something that you have to factor in with how you want to deal with things and how you want to work with your kitchen. So that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to discovering and finding like a balance in terms of like how does our kitchen work Tuesday to Saturday or Tuesday to Sunday while still allowing people to be home.
100%. I think firstly it's most of the time we just see young female chefs put into pastry. But I love that you're invested in actually like, well, there has to be a way to make it sustainable for everyone. I mean, we're seeing, chefs of all genders, all ages. It's not sustainable the way the industry has been running. And I think acknowledging that, there's nothing wrong with being a chef and a mother. There has to be a way to make it work. And why not? Like,
I think it's just been that. It's one of those things where it's just difficult to do, but you have to do it because, like you said, you can't sustainably continue the way that we've been continuing in the industry. But I do think it requires a lot of work. But hopefully we find that right moment where we're like, okay, this is how it works.
And, are you finding that balance? Are you getting closer to finding it? Not yet.
But I think so. I think it's close,
Amazing. And I mean, I think what I love to hear is always like how close you are to your family and how much time you manage to spend with your family. How are you finding your own balance in the kitchen?
And being at home.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have a family that's always keen for something.
Fair enough.
So I can always say, okay, we're doing Tuesday dinner.
Yeah.
So you can't say no. Even if you're leaving work at 5:30, you need to be here for dinner at 6. But how I try to do it is that I also sort of like push myself in terms of like making time for family. So like a Sunday for me is that it's time for work and it's time for family, and it's something that I always have to do.
The recipes that are on your menu now, are those family recipes? Is that, is it your take on family recipes? Is it traditional recipes you've adapted? How does the menu come about?
We were actually talking about this on the group chat, and my sisters were like, you need to start paying mom for all these ideas. And I was like, I'll pay you when I have the money to. But most of the stuff it's truly that just like dishes that she's sort of instilled in our family, and then she's raised me up with, and like that she cooks and we enjoy. Some of it is food that I eat when I'm at home at my grandmother's. But most of it is honestly just my mom's inspiration, and how a single dish comes up is always with her in mind.
Yeah.
Like even in the smallest aspects, she always imparts a certain memory when it comes to food. So that's why it's very difficult when like someone's not enjoying something. I'm just like,
this is my mom's recipe. How can you not be enjoying it? No, I think it's such a beautiful philosophy to have, and I think it's such a beautiful way of showcasing your traditional cuisine through the menu, and also like a celebrating heritage. I think it's when the money comes, I'm sure your mom will get a cut, but I think it's such a beautiful celebration of family as well. And I mean, you mentioned people not liking your food, and what I absolutely have loved from the first time we met is you said that we do a tasting menu, we don't do individual dishes, because you want people to at least have to try everything. Yeah. And I've just loved that ethos. I think it's so wonderful. I really think it's such a conscious choice you've made to celebrate who you are.
Yeah.
And it's your upbringing, your heritage, all on a plate.
Yeah.
And I think that takes us to your current menu now, which was absolutely delicious. And I mean, let's talk about the isibindi.
So the isibindi is sort of like, so when you go home or you go to the farms, it's sort of like the process when the animal is slaughtered, and while it hangs, so the blood drips out. Everyone eats like the inner bit, so the livers, the lungs, and everything that's inside. So the inspiration behind that dish was that it's just like that. For me, it reminds you of that moment, sitting outside, waiting for either the tribe to get ready, the meat to hang, and just like eating the bits of the animal. But like one of the sort of like famous combinations is livers and onions. So we wanted to include that. We wanted to include onions, and we wanted to have the dish a little bit creamier. So you added some cauliflower to it, like a cauliflower puree, but the liver itself is just liver.
Just how it's amazing. And I mean, it's such a, everyone's talking about sustainable, ethical cooking, and that is essentially what it is. It's using, the leftover cuts, using the ugly bits that aren't normally used. And what I think is so interesting is that this is something that people have been doing. It's something that people have been doing for ever. And it's come to prominence because maybe of a few fancy restaurants, but it's the way that people have been eating for generations and generations. Exactly. And I mean, another dish that was absolutely awesome was the iskabo. And that's a lamb dish. How did that inspiration come about?
I'm not supposed to say this because people are not supposed to know that I read every single time fan review.
Yeah?
But one of the reasons behind...
Aren't reviews the worst?
They hurt.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean we'll pick up. But it's just someone once said, I'm not sure who it was. I think it was a musician or something. They said, all the people who like me are wrong, and all the people who dislike me are wrong. And he's just that's his mentality. It's like
I'm not expecting any nice words from anyone.
Exactly, but I'm not expecting any bad words either.
Okay.
But yeah, shame out. Okay, the downtime review.
So one of the reviews was like, okay, the food was bland.
Food, which is so flavorful.
So when I went home that night, I was like, wow, okay. So if I had to think of something that has a lot of flavor, what would it be? And I just thought of like a low vibrational braai plate with the pickled beetroot and the chakalaka and the butternut, and some sam. So I just wanted a dish that recreates that brings a bit more flavor. So we cooked the lamb over fire, and we made a not very spicy chakalaka that we put on the plate, and some butternut puree, and you sort of enjoy it with a bit of beetroot and some sam. And for me, that dish just says home. It says Sunday lunch.
Yeah.
It says
7 colors.
Yeah, it says 7 colors. So that's what I enjoy about that dish at the moment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it definitely comes through through that dish, and yeah, it's definitely up there. We'll be back with Chef Mmabatho after the break. After Service with Steve is brought to you by Stella Artois, the internationally beloved Belgian beer, crafted from hand-selected ingredients. With a brewing legacy of over 6 centuries, Stella Artois invites us to make time for the Life Artois, where we can slow down, savor life's moments, and share the enjoyment of good food, great music, and each other. Join me as I open a beer and chat to the country's top chefs. We're back with Chef Mmabatho Molefe at Emazulwini. Again, thank you for being with me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, no, had to include you. We always end off the show by talking about something outside of the kitchen.
Okay.
And what I absolutely love about your Instagram page is self-care Sundays. Whether it's a cocktail, whether it's a face mask.
Yeah.
Like, I love that you do these rituals. What's your current self-care Sunday routine?
My most recent self-care Sunday routine was that I tried out cupping.
Okay.
For the first time, never doing it again.
I've never done it. Wouldn't recommend?
No. It gets one stuff.
It mustn't read their reviews.
But I do like taking some time on a Sunday to do that. Cook for myself. Yeah. Usually just like clean my apartment as well, because when I come in, I just go to bed and leave.
Fair enough.
So it's just that sort of, we call it a reset. I think everyone who does it calls it like a reset, where you just like, I'm cleaning my space. Yeah. I make myself a really nice drink. Okay. At the moment, it's Please. I'm drinking a lot of Please. Yeah. From Pina and Son. They did a collab with like a sex shop.
Okay. What is it?
It's an aphrodisiac. Yeah. Apparently. Okay. It's really good.
What base is it, or what's?
I don't know what the base it is, but it has like notes of honey and fig.
Oh, it sounds delicious.
It's really good. It goes well with like anything. I drink it with grapefruit juice. Okay. It's really good. So I do that. I do the usual face mask. Yeah. And I have to soak my feet because they've been in bad shape.
I guess, you're standing all the time.
But it's honestly just that. It's saying, okay, I'm dedicating some time to look after myself.
I think it's so important, especially when, you're a businesswoman on top of being a chef, on top of being such a family woman. I think it really is such an incredible way to find balance. And I think it's so important because, if you're not at your best, I guess how can you expect your kitchen to be at the best?
Yeah. And it's also just one of the, like, if you make it a ritual, then you sort of have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So hold yourself accountable to
Sunday.
it. Yeah. No, fair enough. I've started doing yoga on Sunday nights. So it's like hot yoga. So you sweat out all the weekend. And then,
by Monday, you good to go.
And it does. And it's like cleaning spaces. I think it's exactly the same. It's just finding something that is a reset. I think that's a wonderful word for it. Yeah. Well, Mabs, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm not going to keep you any longer. I know you guys are open for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much. This was an episode of After Service with Steve. Next time, we'll be sitting down with Chef Ryan Cole. If you enjoyed this episode of After Service with Steve, subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. After Service with Steve is brought to you by Stella Artois.